Florida State is going to be taking on Georgia Tech week 0 of the upcoming college football season. This is going to be a neutral site game. They're going to be playing in Dublin, Ireland. FSU currently is a 13-point favorite going into this matchup, but I've seen a few people on Instagram and X say that Florida State could be on the upset watch for this matchup. So I want to give my early thoughts on this game and talk about Georgia Tech's chances of pulling off this upset. Now, they entered their second season under Brent Key, and they had a really good 2023 campaign. They went 7-6. They returned 83% of their offensive production from last year, including quarterback Haynes King, who accounted for 37 total touchdowns, 27 through the air, 10 on the ground. They also get back their 2 top receivers and their leading rusher from last year, and they got 3 starters on the offensive line returning as well. And they got a new staff on defense. The biggest thing for Georgia Tech in this game, if they're going to pull off the upset, is that, for one, you need Haynes King to play mistake-free football. You're not going to beat Florida State with him throwing 2-3 interceptions. Last year, he had 16 interceptions, which was a main reason why their defense kind of struggled. Now, their defense wasn't good at doing anything. They weren't good against the pass. They weren't good against the run. As a matter of fact, this was probably the worst defense in the ACC last year, one of the worst in college football. But it doesn't give your defense any favors when you got a quarterback that's just chalking up the pigskin to the other team 2 and 3 times a game and putting your defense in unfavorable positions. Georgia Tech, you can't afford to have any turnovers against Florida State, with this being the more superior team from a talent standpoint. And defensively, Florida State's defense is going to be really good. They are still going to have a really good defensive line that's going to be still really productive at getting pressure on the quarterback. You got Fentrell Cypress returning at cornerback, so your secondary is still going to be good. You bring back DJ Lundy at linebacker. This is still going to be a highly productive defense that Florida State is going to have, and that's going to make things really hard on Georgia Tech to win this game, with this being more of a offensive-centric team. Georgia Tech needs their defense to be massively improved to pull off this upset. Now, the good thing is that you're not going up against a good quarterback. DJ Uiagalelei is really overrated. Too many people judge this dude based off the stats without actually watching the games. Anytime he has played against a top 25 team his last 2 years at Clemson and Oregon State, he has struggled to complete over 60% of his passes in these games. He's turnover prone, doesn't make good decisions with the football. Florida State, you want to put them in a situation where they can't have success running the ball, and they have to overly rely on DJU to win the game with his arm, because then you're going to have the opportunity to come away with takeaways, which you were 11th in the nation at doing last year, and that was the only reason your defense was able to get the amount of stops that they were able to get last year. So if your defense can remain being good at forcing takeaways, and you put Florida State in a game where they got to be one-dimensional on offense, you have a very good chance of pulling off this upset. Not only is DJ Uiagalelei a question mark at quarterback for them, but the wide receiving position is also a question mark as well, because they're not lacking talent at wide receiver, but they definitely are not as good at that position as compared to what they were last year when you had Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman along with Jaheim Bell. You had a lot of weapons to work with in the passing game. You don't have that this year, and plus you're lacking key depth at that position. Florida State, if this offense is going to pick up from where they left off last year, it's going to be because of how good their offensive line is going to be at run blocking and how dominant their rushing attack is going to be, because no matter what, we always know that Florida State is great when it comes to producing elite running backs. So you know this rushing attack is going to be really good. And if you're Georgia Tech, the only chance you have at winning this game is by limiting how effective Florida State is going to be running the football and put them in a game where they have to rely on DJU to put the ball in the air around 27, 30 plus times in this ball game, because that increases your chances of getting those turnovers, giving your offense a short field, and being able to capitalize off that. I'm taking Florida State to win this game 28-17. I do think with this being a week 0 game, there is going to be a little bit of rust, because you know that these guys have a very long off season. The only people they've been hitting and practicing against each other are themselves. And with DJU being at QB, if he ends up struggling like how he has done in these big games the last couple of years, you got a very good shot at being able to pull away and get this upset. Because DJU, with him being at quarterback, every game for Florida State potentially could be a dogfight. Not saying that they're going to lose every game, but he's one of those quarterbacks that he's not really all that consistent as compared to what you were getting out of Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis, if he was playing in this game, it will be an absolute bloodbath. Georgia Tech wouldn't have a single chance. But with you having a pretty good offense, and with your offensive line improving, you can score some points on this defense, but I don't know how many points you're capable of scoring if Haynes King has 2 or 3 turnovers, and he has 16 total interceptions last year. He has to get that number cut down when you're going up against a team like Florida State. Making mistakes get magnified times 100 against a team like this. But I'm taking Florida State to win. I don't really think that Florida State is in trouble of suffering an upset, because Georgia Tech lost so much on defense to the transfer portal. Their defensive line isn't that good. They don't have a lot of depth at that position. Their secondary is pretty solid. They got Miles Brooks. Shout out to the 904 brethren out there. He's doing this thing. He's one of the better safeties in college football. I do think their secondary could be solid, but they got a lot of question marks on that defense. And with Florida State being a team that I believe is going to be more ground and pound, more run-centric, Georgia Tech, they're going to get clocked in this game. Florida State should control and win the time of possession battle. And also, I just think FSU is going to be the team that's going to take better care of the football. When you have 16 interceptions and you're averaging 2-3 interceptions a game, it's hard for me to trust you in a game like this early during the season. Now, the reason why I don't think this will be a runaway win for Florida State is because they probably are going to struggle and start out slow coming out the gate. Maybe they get down early. Let's say they go down 14-3 at halftime to Georgia Tech. And then in the second half, they come out and they find a way to rally from behind and win the game. Those are the ways that I can see this game playing out. Either Florida State gets into a close dogfight early and it's 13-10, 17-14 at halftime, and then they slowly pull away in the second half, or they get out to a slow start early and then they rally from behind in the fourth quarter. But even if you're Georgia Tech, if you can get up in this game at any point and you get Florida State playing from behind, especially if you go into the fourth quarter up by a touchdown or 10 points, you love your chances to hold on to the win, because DJU is not good playing from behind because he's not that efficient as a passer. Florida State really doesn't have the kind of team that's built to get into these high-scoring matchups, or that's built to win by having to overly rely on the passing attack to compensate for the lack of production on the run game. This is a team that is only going to go as far as what this rushing attack can take them, and asking DJU to just do enough. They're asking DJU not to lose them the game, and they don't want to have the ball in his hands too often. But Georgia Tech, if they can find a way to shut down that run game, have DJU slinging the pinskin 27 plus times, they definitely have a good chance to pull off this upset. But I don't think that Georgia Tech has it up front on their defensive line, and I don't think their defense is good enough to make Florida State the one-dimensional team that you have to make them if you want to knock off the nose this year. So that's why I don't really think Florida State is going to be too concerned when it comes to suffering the early season upset bug. I love Brent Key and what he's building down there at Georgia Tech, but even though I'm not high on Florida State, you still do have to be a pretty good defensive team, and you got to have a quarterback that you can trust to take care of the football. I don't think they have that in Haynes King. Now, he is going to be able to make some big plays on the ground. He's one of the better dual threat quarterbacks returning this season, but you got to be able to take care of the football. I don't trust him to do a good job of that. And mistakes get magnified when you're playing a team like FSU. So I don't see FSU being on upset watch. I believe they should win this game pretty comfortably.